Neurodiversity is most often compared to biodiversity.
Neurodiversity is not a medical or scientific term.
There is no one or right kind of being, no one or right kind of brain.
What is neurodiversity? What makes the practice neuroaffirming? Join us at the Neurodiversity MENA podcast, where we'll share the answers to all your neurodiversity questions. Whether you're navigating neurodiversity yourself, advocating for a loved one, or looking to make your practice more neuroaffirming, or just curious to learn more, this podcast is for you. Let's shape a world where all brains can thrive.
Have you ever felt like the world isn't built for the way your brain works?
Or why are schools, colleges, and workplaces designed to cater for one kind of brain?
And speaking of brains, what if we start focusing on what's strong rather than what's wrong?
Welcome to Neurodiversity MENA podcast. This is Kehdy, she, her. Joining me today, Shija Sapru and Heidi Frost. We're so excited to kickstart our premiere episode, Neurodiversity 101, which will be a part of introductory series to break down the basics of neurodiversity.
Thank you, Karen. I'm Shija Sapru, she, her. I often get asked as to when did I start learning about neurodiversity, where and how I got educated about neurodiversity. The fact is, when the professionals associated with the field told me all about what my children cannot do, all what their challenges were, I just wanted them to be valued for who they are, rather than looking at both the strengths and challenges at the same time. So, in fact, today we call it as embracing neurodiversity. Back then, I didn't know much about it. So I kind of started learning neurodiversity through blogs, articles, and probably random posts on LinkedIn, probably.
Yeah, it's interesting. In my case, Shija and Heidi, it was more of a journey, like it was a long journey. It all started by following autistic self-advocates, neurodiversity self-advocates, reading books made by neurodivergents. And my curiosity led me to Judy Singer. At that time, Judy Singer is the Australian sociologist who coined the term neurodiversity back in 1998. And it was mainly through her work that I learned most about neurodiversity and how it can shape, our understanding of body-brain differences. And I had to say I had to learn and unlearn a lot. And I can tell you the unlearning was way more than the learning. And I also, to be honest, to be fair, I learned a lot from other activists and advocates in the community, but I know it would take a whole episode to mention them all. So yeah, I'm grateful, honestly, for the whole neurodivergent community and autistic community, because I learned a lot from them.
Yeah, no, I hear that. The whole episode discuss who we learned from. Hi, I'm Heidi Frost, she, her. Finding out I'm autistic really helped me. It made everything make so much sense about my life and my past, including why I'm so interested in this topic, because understanding how neurotypical people's brains works just became a fixation, because that's what I needed to survive. And yeah, it's, as the quote goes, there's value in knowing I'm going to correct a zebra and not a broken horse.
For those of you who don't know, we are all part of the Neurodiversity MENA platform, a platform that has been passionately created by parents of neurodivergent children, neurodivergent themselves, and some of us who are truly passionate about the field, who want to dive deeper.
Yeah, and I think we definitely encompass a lot of identities. We're researchers, we're advocates, self-advocates, self-IDNDs, professionally diagnosed neurodivergence, just all kinds. And nerd right here.
Yeah. Well, let's make sure that we all understand, terminologies better. I know, recently there's a lot of misconceptions around the term and the concept neurodiversity, probably because, the whole concept is gaining momentum recently. But it's also important that we highlight that the whole concept of neurodiversity is there since years and years. It was there since 1998, basically, since Judy Singer coined the term. And maybe probably before that, but no one coined it. So yeah, only few people recognized it back then. And I think even now, we still need more awareness. We need more neurodiversity awareness. It's much needed.
Yeah, and neurodiversity is most often compared to biodiversity. It encompasses like brain structure differences, neurology differences, and just everything that we as humans contain, differences in our brains and how we think. And also like how our brains and our bodies communicate. Like it's not just brain, although most of it's brain. Some of it's how my brain talks to my hands, for example.
It's interesting when you say that, like how your brain talks to your brain. I like it.
Or doesn't, more accurately.
Yeah, even also neurodiversity is the concept, it's the ideology and concept to accept and embrace the neurological and cognitive differences. And these differences are invisible, basically.
You have been on many platforms. You, I think, would be a handful of the advocates that we have in the UAE. What has changed over time since you have started talking about it?
Thank you, Shija, for the question. Yeah, indeed. When I started, bringing the topic of neurodiversity in this part of the world, okay, when I say this part of the world, it's UAE, it was less spoken about and it wasn't recognized much here. I have to be honest, I had a lot of moments rather than the expected moments, So when I was expecting the most of them, they used to say, what are you talking about? So yeah, I had a lot of questions back then. And why neurodiversity? Why you give this importance to this term or word? Why is it so important to you? It's just a term. Language evolves, and this term or this word might be replaced by any other new term. So why you're so obsessed about this term? And honestly, the question here is, can it be replaced? Because at the end of the day, neurodiversity isn't just a buzzword. It's much more than that. It's created to popularize a concept, which is the concept of neurological diversity. It's a whole movement. It's a neurodiversity movement, social justice movement, human rights movement. It's much more than a buzzword. Shija, we've met years back, I remember. What do you think have changed since then in terms of neurodiversity awareness?
I think, I don't know, not much, to be precise. It's still bare minimum of awareness. And good thing is that people have started using the terms neurodiverse, neurodivergent, and neurotypical. All these words have come up, even when they're not used properly. But still, I'm happy that they have started using it. Yeah. But
not saying anything.
No, that's okay. But yes, these words have been there since quite a long time, like you said. Even the term neurodivergent was coined by Kasian in 2000. I'm sure I didn't know it in 2000, for sure. So, what do you think?
I'm not sure even if I knew anything about neurodiversity in 2000. So, yeah.
Exactly. And what about you, Heidi?
Well, I can talk forever about the grammar of it because, the neurodiverse and neurodivergent, they're the same thing. But I swear I'll talk about that when I'm supposed to and not now. Because I'll never shut up.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, this is one more reason why we need this podcast and why we need to clear a lot of the linguistic confusion around the term neurodiversity. I mean, they all say, what's in it in a definition? So it's just a definition. Well, I'd say we need to understand better. We need to learn better. If you want to support our kids or we want to support ourselves and support our community, our society, we need to learn better about the definitions and terminologies. And at the day, when we talk about neurodiversity, it's the whole shift in mindsets. It teaches us, it teaches human beings that there are multiple ways of existing on this earth. So it's really important.
Can you explain that? Multiple ways of existing.
Yeah, what I mean here is there's multiple ways of processing information, multiple ways of communications, multiple ways of socializing, multiple ways of making sense of the whole world around us. Okay. And neurodiversity, it's very much comparable to biodiversity. Heidi mentioned that earlier. So it's a subset of biodiversity. So the whole concept of neurodiversity is based on the idea that there's no right or wrong brain type or neurotype. So just like, biodiversity, when in biodiversity everyone can relate to the term biodiversity. I'm sure everyone knows about biodiversity. We don't have like a right or wrong tree, right or wrong fish. Just like that, we don't have also a right or wrong neurotype. We don't have superior neurotype. All neurotypes or all brain types are equal. And I think biodiversity, it's very essential for the planet. Also, neurodiversity is very necessary for flourishing human society. So they're both really important.
Yeah, and diversity is strength, and lack of diversity as rigidity is weakness. It's actually very bad for you, for your species. That's why we say humanity as a whole is diverse. We're a pretty good example of that here in the UAE.
Exactly.
I think that's why I like comparing it to culture, because it's really easy to lean into the biology analogy because it's a really good one, but culture is one that people are like more intimately familiar with, and just like there's no one right culture, there's no one right way having a brain or thinking either.
Absolutely.
And like that's why it's important that we as humans have multiple cultures, and it's important that we as humans have multiple ways our brains and our bodies work. Like you might have seen this in your daily life in that friend who thinks that numbers all have colors, and that 7 is red and red only, and they will die on this hill, and they will absolutely fight you on what color your kid's science folder is. And then you might see it in a more extreme example in someone who's answering a question by quoting obscure poetry that you don't recognize, and you don't know how to deal with that. But all of those are forms of neurodivergence, and all of that's valuable. There's no one right culture, no one right neurotype.
Yeah, I like the way you're comparing it also to culture, which just makes total sense, especially where we're living now. So
yes, with the diverse culture in UAE. Heidi, can you explain these terms? Neurotype, neurodivergent, neurodivergence.
I finally get to talk about
yes.
We have too many terms. That's okay. Neurotype just means like what category your brain falls into. Like to use the cultural example, you might say, I'm Egyptian, even though that's an incomplete explanation of who you are as a person. Your neurotype is the category your brain and your nervous system falls into in the broad sense. So your neurotype might be neurotypical, which means that you think more or less a lot like the people around you. A neurotype might be ADHD, meaning a person thinks very fast and might have a high degree of creativity. A person's neurotype might be autistic, which is about joy. But there are a lot of neurotypes. They can include Down syndrome, because those are the ones everyone already kind of associates with neurodivergence, but there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
That can include like Down syndrome, dyslexia, DiGeorge syndrome, dyscalculia, bipolar disorder, sociopathy, anxiety, Tourette syndrome, intellectual disabilities, OCD, sensory processing disorder. And there's a lot more than that. A neurotype can describe how you think, but it's also how your brain works and how the connections are built. It's both how you take in sensory information and how your brain talks to the rest of your body. And so I still, like, I'll try not to talk too much about it, but so neurodiversity versus neurodivergent. Neurodiversity refers to both neurotypical and neurodivergent people. It is a collective noun. Neurodiverse describes a system or a species. It's collective. It is not singular. If you say you are neurodiverse, you are just grammatically wrong. It'd be like if I said, I'm biodiverse. No, I'm not. I might be part of Earth's broader biodiversity, but I am not by myself biodiverse. I have to say I'm biologically divergent if I want to describe myself as different from others in like a biology sense. Yeah. That's why we say I'm neurodivergent and not I'm neurodiverse.
A lot of that sounds medical, right? I mean, I mean, probably many of us also heard like many doctors asking us, your kids or probably you should be medically treated. But hey, I mean, we're not here to talk today about the medical model of disability. We're here today to highlight about the social model of disability.
So we will talk about the medical and social models in a different episode.
Yeah, exactly. But not today. So today we're just highlighting the social model of disability. And we need to highlight, when we talk about the social model of disability and the medical model of disability, we need to highlight that neurodiversity, which represents the social model of disability, it's not here by any chance to replace the medical model. It's in fact here to strike the balance between both models. So there's we don't want our audience to get confused. Oh, like we're talking about the social model or neurodiversity is just here, the movement is here to replace the medical model. So this is not true. But it's also important to understand the concept of neurodiversity. So if you ask me what is neurodiversity and what it is not, I would say neurodiversity is a social and political term. Neurodiversity is not diagnosis. Neurodiversity is not a medical or scientific term. Neurodiversity is not a synonym for neurological differences. And I know there's a lot of confusion around that because many medical experts are choosing to co-opt the word neurodiversity as a diagnosis. Yes. But it is not a synonym for neurological differences. So we need to clear that because using the word neurodiversity, it's just like saying it encompasses both neurodivergence and neurotypicality. So it's never meant to be a diagnosis. But yes, there are some advocates and some medical professionals, they're choosing to use it interchangeably with neurodivergent or neurodiverse. But we wanted our audience to understand better the terminologies behind the words and the meaning of each word.
Could you talk about the neurodiversity movement a little more?
The neurodiversity movement is basically created by autistic individuals from the autistic community. Like initially it was created by individuals from the autistic community that felt oppressed, marginalized back then. And they felt that there's a need to create a movement to advocate for their rights, the rights of neuro-minority that are marginalized back then and unfortunately still marginalized. Yep. So it's a social justice movement. It's more like a human rights movement to advocate for systematic changes, to advocate for accommodations, better services for the neuro-minority or neurodivergence. So the movement is basically, it's a social justice movement to advocate for the rights of neurodivergence. And, till now, neurodivergence and even parents of neurodivergence are still fighting for the same rights. They're still fighting for equal access to education, equal access to workplace. They're still fighting for fighting ableism at every level in our society. So this movement is still needed till now.
So it's just like racism and all these kind of
oppression. Yeah, pretty much everything with ism. Racism, everything with ism you can think of.
And here it would be looking like separating the neurotypicals and neurodivergence in classrooms, for example, not having the right set of accommodations and accessibility in place. Would you say that?
Yeah.
But can people really fight this kind of ableism?
It's a huge, it's a big topic. We would probably need a whole episode to talk about ableism.
Is it worth it to fight any kind of oppression?
Yeah.
But does it work? I don't know. That's different questions.
Yeah. but I'd say honestly, like fighting ableism, or if we probably want to choose a more friendlier word, like being anti-ableist, we should probably start within ourselves. Each and every one of us have sort of internalized ableism. And I think we should start within ourselves and we should start focusing more on shifting those deficit-based perspective, moving away from these deficit-based perspective towards more strength-based mindset. And we should advocate for systematic changes, and try to learn from the lived experience, neurodivergent lived experiences, try to amplify their voices. And I think also language matters. I really think language matters. We should move away from the deficit-based language to more strength-based language, more neuro-affirming language. this is what is neurodiversity. It's just moving away from the deficit-based model, from this whole broken idea of being, different, to a strength-based model, focusing on the strength. And when we say Shija here is focusing on strength, we're not by any chance dismissing the struggles or the disabilities or the co-occurring conditions that come along with neurodivergence.
Both at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, internalized ableism is kind of the assumptions you don't realize you have about either disabled people or about ability and inability in yourself and your family. So a good example of that would be like assuming you're a bad person or feeling like you're a bad person if you're not productive at all times of the day, or feeling guilty when you rest. It can also be that feeling of pity you have when you just see a disabled person out living their lives and you feel grateful that you're not disabled like they are. And it's not bad, strictly speaking, to like be grateful for your body to be able, like that's not the bad part. It's the pity that comes immediately afterwards. It's the knock-on effect from that. Because to bring it back to culture, which I love to do, you can be entirely grateful that you're Canadian, for example, but if you look at someone who's not Canadian and you feel pity for them, that they're not Canadian, that's prejudice. That's where it tips from, like, it's fine to be proud of who you are, into actual ism.
Another ism.
Label all of just list them all right here. So when you see a disabled person, you don't have to feel guilty that you're glad you're able, but like challenging your internalized ableism would be like, when you start to feel pity for them, you can ask yourself like, well, I could still become disabled because anyone can at any time. I could be like they are. What would I want if I were just outliving my life while I'm disabled? When I see that person, what should I do? And I think that's just a good place to start with changing that for yourself.
Yeah, I totally agree. And when you talk about that, I'm thinking now about the infantilization, like which really bothers me. When adults see other adults, disabled adults, they will start with the infantilization, which is kind of hurtful and ableist, and it bothers me. But it's unconsciously, they do it without, maybe it's out of, they don't know how harmful it is, but it is harmful and ableist. And now we come to the topic of, I think, neuro-affirming approaches or neuro-affirming practices. So
which we're also going to do a whole episode on.
Exactly, yeah. So what is neuro-affirming approaches? It's a set of approaches and practices, basically, that accepts and embrace the different brain wiring, the different brain types, different neurotypes. It's pretty much similar to the culturally, affirming practices. Because just like we have, as you said earlier, Heidi, just like you mentioned, that there's no, we should embrace differences in the cultures. We accept and embrace the differences in culture. The same way, we should also accept and embrace differences in neurotypes. And just like there's no one superior culture, like there's no one right culture or wrong culture, they're just different cultures. I think it's the same way for neurotypes or brain types. We don't have one superior neurotype.
Yeah,
they're all equal. It's not like the neurotypicality as a neurotype. It's the right neurotype, whereas autism, for example, it's the wrong neurotype. We don't have that. It's just like the cultural, pretty much like the culture. Yeah. So we have to accept them and we have to embrace them, and
Yeah, and that's something that I think we here in the UAE do really well with multicultural, cultural affirming practices in our schools and in just our daily lives for the most part. And it can be really hard, like if you're not used to that and you're coming from a monocultural country or school system, it can be really hard to see where your assumptions are. Like where is the assumption that my culture is best baked into my school system? That can be difficult to spot. You have to ask yourself questions like, so why is eye contact included in my teaching rubric for PowerPoint presentations? Because that's both cultural and related, that's eye contact is both cultural and neurotype dependent. and things like, you know, if I were to remove voice volume from my grading system for my kids, my students' projects, what can I replace it with? What was I trying to measure? And I think that's a really good way to just start trying to find where are my ableist assumptions in my school system, in my grading, in my, you know, daily life.
Yeah, so it's like not to make things easy or nice. The whole idea is like a value addition to the society.
Yes.
And strengthening our schools, workplace, communities. So it isn't just schools that could kind of benefit from these kind of value addition. I think everywhere, even workplaces, wherever there are like, despite the challenges, I guess, with the neurological differences, everything could be a strength to the entire system in place.
Exactly. And it's definitely something we're good at here in the UAE with culture. We're, you know, and we want to see that expanded into, you know, neuroaffirming practices. And that in your workplace, that might look like talking to HR about timing policies, because a good cultural example here in the UAE is almost all the companies here have a mix of employees who are coming from a time is money culture and a relationship is money culture, because those are highly conflicting ideas about how you deal with your boss, your coworkers, deadlines, timing. And you know, it might be important to have HR remove some of your timing based evaluations for employees, or even just timing policies altogether, because you know, these companies aren't sitting here going, oh, we are doing such a nice thing for our poor, unfortunate souls of WASTA using employees who might have to spend a lot of time with VIPs. Oh, poor them. We're being so nice that we're not holding them to our timing policies. They're not doing that. They're looking at, oh, hey, they're really good at dealing with our VIPs. We like the value they're bringing to our company, even though they occasionally blow off deadlines or, you know, timing expectations, or miss less important meetings to spend time with the VIP. And that extends into neuroaffirming practices. You can have that. You don't have to do that just for culture. You can do that for neurotypes.
Yeah. I mean, our understanding of this topic, I think it's really important because it paves the way for better support, better services. And I mean, they ask why neurodiversity awareness? I mean, neurodiversity, advocating for neurodiversity awareness, it's much more than, you know, understanding the neurological differences, or it's much more than advocating for services, for better accommodations. It's basically advocating for systematic changes, and these changes will benefit everyone in the society. So when we advocate for systematic changes, because, you know, awareness brings changes, and these changes will benefit everyone. Not
rising
only,
tide lifts all ships.
Yeah, and it will benefit everyone, not only neurodivergents, but also neurotypicals. So the whole neurodiverse population. So it's really important. And like now, for example, we're in Dubai. Dubai is famous for malls. Just an example about the malls. Let's say one of the malls decided they will have, like, for example, 2-3 hours, quiet hours per day, or maybe let's say per week. These 2-3 quiet hours, which has less, let's say, bright lights, less sounds, less people, let's have more calm spaces. So can we imagine if this happened, how many people would benefit from that? Because at the end of the day, you know, okay, neurodivergent, and when I say people, I mean everyone, the neurodiverse individuals, because neurotypicals and neurodivergents, they both will benefit from this. I mean, yes, neurotypicals do have also sensory overwhelm. They might be also overwhelmed by lights or by noises, so they will benefit from this. I can only imagine if this happened, how many people will start going shopping, and then just rather than online shopping, they will start going to the mall, actually buying their groceries or shopping for the kids. So it makes it, this adjustment can make a huge difference for many people. And I just want to highlight that, okay, I'm not comparing by any chance the sensory experience of neurodivergence to the sensory experience of neurotypicals, because it's not the same. Yes, neurotypicals do have sensory overwhelm, but it's definitely not the same as neurodivergent experiences, because it's definitely not the same intensity, not for the same reasons. I mean, neurotypicals, maybe they had a headache or they didn't sleep the day before, so when they go to the mall, they will be really overwhelmed with noises. But when with like neurodivergence, the intensity, it's different, it's painful, and it's every single time. And the pain, the whole intensity is different. Just want to make sure that we don't have any misunderstanding. Yeah.
Yep. Thank God for hearing loss. I no longer have to deal with the audio assault.
I mean, here in MENA, just like I think any other country, the whole neurodiversity awareness is growing. It's still growing. Okay, there's a lot of challenges. There are a lot of roadblocks on the way, stigma, but it's still growing, and it's not easy, it's never easy. Change is never easy, and I think it would take really time for the people to realize the power of neurodiversity. And so it will take time, but to be honest, I'm really grateful to be here in Dubai, raising my kids in Dubai, because I think that we're now sowing the seeds. I know that there's a lot of challenges, but also I think we are sowing the seeds now. There are a lot of initiatives happening. There are a lot of advocates, parents, professionals that they are trying to reflect more on their approaches and trying to adapt their approaches to neurodiversity values. And this is really important. And it's very insightful to see this whole process of learning and unlearning. It's really inspiring. One example is, for example, now there's a MENA Congress, which is meant to be for rare diseases, but they have dedicated a whole section for neurodiversity, which is really also important. And I think we should see more and more of these conferences and events focusing on neurodiversity and neuroaffirming approaches. It's much needed in our community.
Small steps, big impact.
100%.
So let me try summarizing this for our audience. Let's take our audience as an example. So the audience is a neurodiverse group. Each individual cannot be neurodiverse. The group is neurodiverse, and each person in that audience has a different neurotype. Heidi, correct me if I go wrong anyway.
Yes, you're right. I'm just trying not to take over.
Okay. Anyone whose neurocognitive functioning aligns with the majority, they would be called as neurotypical. And anybody who is divergent from the majority is a neurodivergent. So our audience will have neurotypical and neurodivergent people, each with a different neurotype. And the whole neurodiversity movement was created so that we tell each and everyone, we remind each and everyone that there is no one or right kind of being, no one or right kind of brain. Yeah?
Yeah. Thank you, Shija, for the
Very good summary. Yeah.
Yeah.
And remember, change starts with us. And please, you can help yourself by subscribe, and sharing. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can share with your family members, anybody who might want to learn about this, or just want to talk about it. This is their kind of thing. Feel free to share with them. You can check out our website at neurodiversitymena.com and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Blue Sky, all the usual socials. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.